Okay, here I am in my improvised studio, and here are some examples of some of my artwork. Flowers, seascapes, landscapes, forestry scenes, wooded seas, abstracts, abstract cityscape. And it's this particular painting that I'm particularly proud of. I call it Lady in Red, and I've done a number of versions of it, and I got the idea from watching a YouTube channel called Paint with Jane. Now, Jane used to do it in acrylics, but I do it in oil. And this is the first copy of this painting I've done. I've done about 3 or 4 others, and I sold them within about 10 minutes of putting them up on the wall. So I've been experimenting with different ways of doing it, because I want to make these paintings visible and recognisable as being from certain cities. So what I did with an earlier version was I drew onto a background and traced onto it landmarks from London, a little bit like this. So I traced on things like the Shard, Canary Wharf, Big Ben, Tower Bridge, and a few other buildings with acrylic, and then I painted over them. This, incidentally, on the left-hand side is the Tower of London, and this painting is going to be turned into something known as Blood, Sweat, Land and Seas of Red. In 2014, there was this massive war memorial planted of ceramic poppies in the Tower of London moat, which completely surrounded the Tower of London. And it was one poppy for every soldier who died in World War I. But anyway, I traced on figures on backgrounds like this, painted over them, and then painted in the normal cityscape, the normal buildings, the Lady in Red, and that was it. But I've been experimenting even more. I've been taking very visible landmarks for cities, and this is New York. We have everything from the left-hand side from the New York Empire State Building, then followed by the Chrysler Building. Then we have the Guggenheim and a couple of others. In the background you see the United Nations buildings. We come across to the right, the World Trade Center, the Brooklyn Bridge, City Hall, the massive, or so it seems, Flatiron Building, St. Patrick's Church, the Waldorf Astoria, and then finally on the right the Rockefeller. So I'm going to finish off working on this. I've still got to finish off the City Hall building there, which I'm going to do now. And then the next time I'm on, I'm going to be turning this into something like this. So first of all I have to finish off doing the buildings, and I'll be using these acrylic pens. Okay, I've now got everything set up. The underpainting has been finished, though I think I could have made a better job of it. I've also got some marks in to give me an idea about the perspective lines and where the roads disappear into what we call the vanishing point. So my next job is, with my 2-inch brush, I'm going to cover everything with a very thin coat of a paint called Liquid White. And at times I'm going to use a little bit of thinner to thin it out, because I want the buildings to be seen through the liquid white. And the liquid white just makes the canvas wet, so it's easy to apply oil paint. Now I think this is going to take me about 2.5 to 3 hours to finish, but this video is only going to go on for about 15 minutes because it will of course be shortened. Okay, so here goes. Okay, so here we have it. The background now looks thoroughly rained upon. The whole canvas is covered with liquid white, and I'm now going to use black and white and go from the centre, where it's going to be predominantly clear and white, to the outsides, making it darker so that it looks more grey. This, I hope, will give it the full impression of being rained upon. plenty of brush wiping to get some of the excess paint off the brush. Okay, so here we are. I've done a little bit more of the rain, and so as you can see now there are white patches and grey patches, so it looks as if there's rain falling. I'm now going to use a flat brush, which as the name says is flat. It's relatively wide and relatively thin, and I will use that to put the distant outlines of skyscrapers on, and it's fairly simple to do. Okay, so I've put in some of the skyscrapers in the back, and I've now with black and white paint, and I've now blended them with a brush to try and just make them a little bit rain distant. I've carried some of the buildings into the where the road would be, so that means we have reflections. So I now brush down on there, and I brush from side to side. Okay, so that's most of the reflections done, and as you can see, I think it looks pretty good. I think there's a very clear line, which needs tidying up, between the actual buildings and the cityscape and the reflections in the water. Now what I have to do now is put on some more buildings, and I will put them on using a knife. So what I do is, and if you wonder what I'm looking at, I've got this on my iPad here. I can see what's in the camera. So what I have to do is white paint, black paint, marble it a bit, like this. Got it on there, and I go. And there we have a building. Let's go here, let's put another one maybe there. Slightly different layout, slightly different colour. Maybe a bit more black this time. Bring it down the waterline so that I can get reflections, and I will just carry on doing that. So, okay, so that's the knife used to put in additional buildings. I've brought the buildings down below the waterline, brushed sideways to get some more reflections, and the next thing to do is actually put in the water lines, because it's raining. So that means there's going to be ripples in the heavy rain, there's going to be water in the road, and you can show that best by ripples. So I simply get my knife, I get the white paint, little roll of white paint, and then I just brush it gently across the painting. Now the thing is, rain splashes in the distance, they're going to be small, they're going to be close together. As we get to the foreground, then what happens is the ripple lines become longer and further apart. But of course they've got to be dead straight, otherwise it looks like the water is running off the painting. So I'm going to get on with that, and I'll come back when it's finished. Okay, so I've finished off the painting generally, done the buildings, done the road, done the rain, done the weather. Now I've got to put in the lady in red, and I'm going to do that about here. And she's just going to be walking up the road with an umbrella. And the way I'll do it is that I will use something like this, a paint scraper, to scrape off paint, drawing an outline of the lady, slightly smaller than I want it to be, in case I make a mistake, scrape out the paint, then using a filbert brush, which is a little bit like this, which is a round brush, round in both ways, and the knife, I will paint her in. Simple. So let's get on with it. Let's just zoom in to the area where it's going to be. And let's have a look. So I think probably about here. So let's just draw in her body now. So we'll have So as you can see here, what I've done is I've drawn out the outline of the lady in red, and I've scraped out the paint from the middle. I've just drawn as an indication her legs, because we'll go on to those later. So the next thing now is, of course, to finish off scraping the paint and doing the painting. Block me then. If you feel. And of course, the final touch, the signature.